Hello again from BSP headquarters. Well, technically it's the home office, as I'm in my basement right now. But this is Tim, and you're currently listening to episode 22 of the Black Swan podcast. This is where we've been giving you a chance to eavesdrop on conversations with Black Swamp artists and educators. As always, there's a lot of amazing podcast content out there, so we truly appreciate you tuning into our series. Seriously, you could be listening to someone like Joe Rogan or Michelle Obama for all I know, so thanks for being here. No special housekeeping today. We are working on a new promotional event for November, so stay tuned for that. We've got some fresh web content we're working on, plus new video contributions from BSP artists and educators, which should all be cool. So a few weeks ago, I spoke with BSP concert artist Anthony Di Bartolo and had a great conversation, which you're about to listen to today. Anthony is a very diverse musician, being classically trained, but he's also been working more recently with electronics, live processing, and improvisation, and this is all something we'll get into. Anthony just released his new EP on October 16th, which he describes as being percussion-driven, straddling lo-fi, hip-hop, ambient, and down-tempo music with an experimental twist. So what's not to love about that? Plus, he's about to be a first-time dad, which is super exciting all by itself. And in the end, we had a full conversation covering a lot of ground. So here we go. You good?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, great. Sorry, you were just mentioned your Batman mug. And then behind me, I have a picture of Batman, and then I got some Justice League stuff. I'm not a huge comic book fan, I guess, but I have always, sort of liked the Justice League specifically. And then, this picture is from Alex Ross, who's a comic book artist and, kind of very realistic painter and comic book artist. So, I don't know. I've always kind of appreciated it. So, are you a comic book fan then?
I was when I was a kid, yeah. And my cousin is actually a great artist, and he was really into drawing all the Marvel characters and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up, looking at that stuff.
Yeah, Jamel at work, we're not so much anymore, but my coffee mug says meow on it, so that's my daughter's mug. So Jamel and I talk about we're really into all the Marvel and DC movies, kind of at work in general. So we talk about that stuff all the time. We could sit around for like a half hour and chat about, the Avengers and actually sorry, we'll talk about you in a second, but this is
more important. Yeah, this is definitely more important.
This is all going to be all about me. Jamel and I have a running joke where when the first Avengers movie came out, probably before you were born or something, I don't know, you were 10 maybe, I don't know. We were kind of for a year making half plans to go see it together. And then I went to go see it with my wife, and he got pretty ticked at me. So it's still a running joke. He still gives me a hard time about that. So
when did that movie even come out? I don't remember.
Oh man, it was easy 10 years ago or so. I could Google it right now, but
yeah, I need to know now. Can you Google it?
Right.
We're talking. This is important things. Marvel.
Here, I'll IMDb it. Okay,
Okay.
All you listening at home, just give me a second, okay? IMDb, that's my other favorite pastime too.
Totally.
Endgame, no. Infinity War, no. 2012, so 8 years ago.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that was. Yeah, man. I guess I'm not as young as I look.
No, you look
I feel a lot younger in my
Yeah.
mind.
That's holy cow, man. That's funny. My wife and I were just talking about that, and I was talking to Jamel about that. Those are the only two people I know. My wife and Jamel. Those are the only two people I do anything with. We were talking about the same thing because I just turned 45, and I don't feel 45. On the inside, my body feels 45 a lot of the time, most days. But in my mind, I still feel like I'm 25 or whatever in college. And Jamel, I'm sorry, I don't mean to spill the beans. Jamel turns 40 this year,
Okay.
just in a couple days, actually. So we were talking about the same thing the other day at work. I'm like, dude, you feel like you're going to be 40? He's like, well, yes and no. I feel I know what you mean, like, as far as, like, the body's getting older, and he's kind of he's into fitness and health and diet stuff, but, like, he's like, it's harder to get pounds off now, and, trouble spots and stuff like that. So he knows how that is, but and inside, he's still feels like he's a kid, but okay, well, let's talk about you, Anthony. Is it Anthony?
Cool.
Would you go by Tony?
No, Anthony's
Tony?
good.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Anthony, or like, because my dad's from South Philly, so you have the Anthony,
Anthony.
Anthony was like, that's how it was growing up.
Yeah. So before we get too far, like, give me a little bit about, like, kind of bird's eye, like, how you did grow up, how you got into music, kind of your schooling, education, so sort of where you are now. Like,
sure.
Can you give me a brief synopsis?
Yeah. So I started out actually, playing drums really early. My dad was a drummer when he was in high school, and he's a baker, so he didn't go into music, and so he he always pushed actually both my brother and I to do what we love to do. And my mom the same way. And so, we had music all around the house from an early age. And so I played drums. Like, I think my first drum set, we have a picture when I was 2.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just like nothing serious, just like hammering away. Yeah. And then I took some piano lessons and kind of kept up with that while I was taking percussion lessons as well, like through high school. And then I did my undergrad at Rowan University, which is kind of close to where I live now, and I also adjunct there, so it's it kind of came full circle recently there, and that's where I studied with Dean Witten, who passed a few years ago, but great dude, and he would actually hate that I called him a dude right now, but or I think man, when you called him man, that was the thing. He's like, he didn't want like man, he didn't like that, but he he was
like a matter of respect, or just like kind of linguistics, he preferred to be referred to as Professor or Mr. Witten, or
no, I mean, he was cool with Dean, but it was like it was an ongoing joke. I don't know why, but there was a long history of like people calling him man, and he didn't like it.
Right.
So it was just like a joke that we have between all of us that studied under him. Yeah.
So you're from East Coast then? Like, you're from Philly then?
Right outside. So I'm like 20 minutes outside of Philly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you frequent Steve Weiss music then when you were younger? Or?
Definitely. Yeah. Yep. And he used to tell me all the old stories, because Dean was a friend of Steve's.
Yeah.
And so he introduced me to him when I was in college, and so it was awesome to get to know him, and talking about all his old mobster stories, and delivering for a baker, and I don't know, it was he was a great dude. Crazy.
It's like, I mean, just through work, I mean, obviously Weiss is our biggest retailer, shout out to Steve Weiss Music right now, but like working with him was really cool, like with Steve Weiss specifically, and but I mean, he's kind of a teddy bear once you get to know him. It's like really abrasive. Like when I was in school, undergrad specifically, and you couldn't order online. This was 20 plus years ago. So I would, I'd have my Steve Weiss music catalog, and then I would call, figure out whatever I wanted. I would call in, and I'd hear Steve, on his typewriter. I'm talking to him. What do you want? Where's it going? Give me your credit card number. And then one time I must have given him a digit wrong, or he typed it in wrong, and he left a horrible voicemail on my answering machine. And my roommate, who was also a trumpet player, we went to school together, who was like, "You got to call this guy back like immediately. He's angry, dude. He's pissed." And it was just, so then I call him back. I'm all nervous. "Hey, Steve, I'm really sorry." He's like, "Yeah, that's cool. Just need the credit card number." I'm like, "Oh man, you scared my roommate to death." But so Rowan.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, a funny thing about him too, like, just because he was a teddy bear and like just so generous. But I have his favorite thing from my dad's bakery were these little kind of like cheese pockets.
Okay.
And we would bring them to him sometimes, and he gave me in return a Zildjian shirt.
Oh,
and I actually still have it. It's got holes all over it, and I'm like, man, but this is like,
can't
this
get
is
rid
like
of it.
The lineage, yeah.
So your dad was a baker, and then you would just deliver stuff to Weiss that he would specifically like shop at your dad's bakery just for fun.
I would go up there and go to go get some things, and just because I liked him, I would my dad would send him something, and I would go into the office, and he would start talking about whatever was going on that day, who was pissing him off, or his stained glass, or whatever it was.
Right.
So it was a cool memory.
Sure. Speaking of Rowan, do you know the name Todd Wells?
Yeah.
Is that familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we went to grad school together at University of Akron, and we were roommates for a year and played a lot together. So I just remember, he studied with Dean, obviously at Rowan, and we don't really keep in touch now other than Facebook. So it's cool to see. I think he's still kind of playing and doing stuff, and he's from New Jersey, so I think he's still around doing that. But
I don't know him super well, but we did play. They had a memorial concert that a bunch of alumnus came back a few years back, and I met him there. We played in a marimba orchestra piece and a couple other things.
Cool.
Yeah.
So then after Rowan, you went to Ithaca, is that right?
I did, and so I studied with Gordon Stout there, and that was just like a life-changing experience for me. And Gordon is still like a good friend and a mentor to me. Yeah. And the best part about being there with Gordon was that he just makes everything look so easy.
Sure.
And also makes everything just like seem like it's possible. And so that's actually what also honed my composition skills there. I actually started composing at Rowan.
Okay.
And I wrote my first concert piece there, which is Music for 5 Marimbas, and that piece we premiered it there, and then when I got to Ithaca, Gordon just like kept encouraging me to compose more, and I also honed my free improvisation skills actually there, because the story that I always remember, I know I'm backtracking a little bit, was from Rowan. When I first got really into free improv was when I used to go into this side practice room at night, and it would be like me and then maybe one or two guitar players, a bass player, like maybe a horn player or something, and we would just like shut the lights out and just like go nuts. And it was like most of the time I played drum set, but sometimes I'd wheel marimba in there. I'd play like just found objects, and we just were like, I was just there at a time. I don't even know that happens now, unfortunately, but like I was just there at a time where there was a lot of people into just exploratory music.
Sure.
And so it was just like a really cool, eye-opening time. And so I got into free improv while I was at Rowan, and then at Ithaca, I was honing my composition skills with Gordon, and then he also, was super supportive of my free improv. And then my first recital there, my grad recital, I had a program of 4 or 5 pieces, and I said, Gordon, I think I want to just improvise transitional material through it. And he said, go for it. So I ended up doing like a 50-minute nonstop program where I like seamlessly, had like a set piece that was composed, and then I improvised transitional material into the next one and that. And people like went nuts over it. So I was like, it was the first time where I was like, oh my God, people actually kind of like to hear me improvise. I thought I was just doing it for me.
Yeah. So the improvisations, and I mean, this is all stuff that I wanted to get into, so I guess no time like the present here. So, So the improvisation at that time at Ithaca, going from like programmed piece to programmed piece, how did you approach that? You were taking kind of elements from the piece that you just ended and then kind of transitioning to elements from the piece you were about to play, or like how did you sort of approach that improv?
That was part of it. I would take themes, but I also, like, by the end of the program, I actually kind of was even using themes from earlier on.
Oh,
and
sure.
kind of like I made like a whirlwind of kind of, I guess, concepts from all the pieces that I played and kind of strung it together.
Yeah. So I was having a conversation with Gloria Yehalevsky like a week or so ago, and she's part of her kind of philosophy is also improvisation, and she talked a little bit about kind of, I know it seems counterintuitive, but the structure of improvisation? Like, do you kind of have a philosophy or a mindset that when you're going into an improvisation session, like how you're going to approach it, or do you give yourself parameters or structure? Like, can you just talk a little bit, I guess, about how you approach improvisation?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and in fact, I recently released a book of exactly that. Okay. So it's 10 basically structures that I recommend to start improvising, and so it's called Improvisation Etudes, Volume 1. And I worked on it for about, I guess, four or 5 years. It was kind of a slow burn,
right,
to get to it. And where it came out of actually was that I didn't do much with it, unfortunately, but I guess 4 or 5 years ago, I started, kind of like putting ideas down in a blog, and I was calling it just #improvise, like that was the hashtag for it. Right. And, but the cool thing about it was that I got my ideas out there, and then I started calling up people that I wanted to play with, and some people I hadn't met before that, I never played with. Some people I played with for years, and we just improvised together, and I recorded them, and they're still out there, which is kind of cool.
Right.
And what we did was I had these cards, and you can actually download them on my website under sheet music. They're free. Sure. And so they're just little structure cards. So it could be like, if you're playing pitched instruments, or if you're with other instrumentalists, it might say set a key, or it might say pick 3 notes, or set a time limit, groove based, song like, and then you put a bunch of them in a hat, or I normally use this big tomato can. I'm Italian, so
right.
I have those laying around.
Sure.
And so I pull them out of the can, and as long as they apply, you leave them there, and then you just go for it. And that was like how it kind of started, and that's how I've when I go do improv clinics, that's like what I do every time is like we do big improvisations with these cards, and it's a lot of fun.
Sure. And so that's a process you sort of developed, or is that something you picked up in your education or exploration?
I definitely didn't make it up.
Yeah.
I got the idea from like this. I guess it's not really the ideas for the structure, but I got the idea to explore like how to teach somebody how to improvise from Bill Kahn's book.
Oh, okay.
That whole creative music making process that he has, and he has no limitations. It's just basically you start playing and then you stop playing,
right.
And it's a whole process of recording it and talking about it. And he was really gracious, actually. He checked out my book, and we were in conversations like a lot right before I released it back in March. So I shout out to Bill Kahn for that. And but yeah, so it was like definitely different from his mindset of just going for it. Mine's a little bit more structured, but I wanted to kind of encourage people to use it in their practice, because that's how I started out using it. Besides like playing in that dark practice room with a bunch of people and just going nuts, like I also would when I remember the first time like learning Porgy and Bess, and I'm like pulling my hair out, with some of the lines, and then I just started improvising around, like what I always like to call them zones, right? Okay. And they're like really Porgy. The first few measures is based off of 6 notes, so it's really not as complex as we like as percussionists like think about it. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's like you have to just get comfortable with these zones and then master those. So it's not just about practicing it. For me, at least, it didn't work just to practice something over and over again the same way. And it really helped me internalize what I was playing.
So using or improvisation as a tool to become more comfortable with content or pieces that might be more technically challenging, you found that to be pretty helpful.
Definitely, yeah. And I play a lot of contemporary music, and we'll probably get into that later. But like playing that music, sometimes I spend a whole practice session on 1 measure or 2 measures, because it's just it's that technically or just mentally challenging, and so I use improvisation, a lot to learn music and again internalize it so that it goes beyond just on the page.
Yeah, no, I think that's I think it's a great point because two things, like Bill's philosophy, if I understand, like kind of limitless improvisation, almost like what I talked to Gloria about it. We kind of agreed that could actually be a little limiting because if you don't have any limits, there's no boundaries really. So it's like you almost get overwhelmed on which direction to go or kind of, what thought you want to musically get out. And shoot, my other point. I forgot my other point. But that was a really good point, Anthony.
Yeah. No, that was, and actually that just made me think of something too. Like when you said it was limiting, I actually also think of like my pieces, for instance, as like they are my pieces. So it's not 100%, original for the, or not. I shouldn't say original. It's not 100%. The players, it's like mine, you know what I mean? It still sounds like me in a sense. And so what I have encouraged anyone who has checked out the book is, I hope that they use these to explore kind of, their voice within, those limitations that I've provided. But then also, hopefully they start making their own improv etudes, or they make their own improvisation material. So it's not like a be-all, end-all. And I think that's the beautiful thing. And like even Gloria and we collaborated on a video last week and kind of did a similar thing where we mashed like our two, ways that we improvise together. And I think that's the best part about it is like we can, explore this free space in our own way.
You touched briefly on some of your contemporary, percussion activities. Like what are you involved in now that it fits under that vein? Because you have a lot going on as far as improvisation and live processing or electronics, which is also what I definitely want to talk about. But you're involved in kind of a music scene on the East Coast, like New Jersey. Maybe New York a little bit. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up now. Eastern Maine, kind of all the way down to the Outer Banks, I think, in North Carolina.
Oh man. Yeah. But I actually kind of grew up in like the Philly scene because I was from South Jersey, and so it's funny though because when I moved back from Ithaca. I had just started playing with this new music group based out of New York City, which they are called Glass Farm Ensemble. And basically, like I had just done a recording with them. And so actually a lot of my work was in New York for a time. And so even, I feel like those next few years kind of shaped a lot of what I was, I guess gearing toward, because I didn't really know exactly what I quote wanted to do when I grew up. I kind of still don't know. Yeah. And so I felt
you're not grown up yet.
No, definitely not. And so I just thought like, I just wanted to meet as many people as possible and play and, just be a diverse musician. And so I didn't want to ever be pigeonholed as just like I only am, a jazz player, I only am a classical percussionist, or I only am a marimbist, or I only am an improviser or whatnot. And so at any rate, when I got out of Ithaca, I did that recording session. I started working with this new music group, and it was really great because we premiered a lot of pieces, and the group was founded by a Swiss musician, so we played a lot of music by Swiss composers. But then in the meantime, I was going down to 42nd and 9th Avenue every weekend, and I was playing a burlesque show on drum set. And, like it was just like this wild thing. It started at 10 p.m. and like it was like, there were like sword swallowing belly dancers and like flamethrowers and, like juggling acts. And then, like, all like wild girls running around, and like it was nuts. And I, you know, like did that for 3 years, and then I met a bunch of like of my Broadway percussionist friends, and you know started getting into like the theater end of things. And so it kind of like it just the New York scene really also like still shapes me. And like I mean I feel like so depressed every time I read the news about like what's going on in New York now, but like because it was such like a vibrant, you know, place to be.
Yeah, sure. Do you know the name Andy Jones?
Yeah.
Who's the percussionist for Wicked? I had, you know, the original Broadway production, and he kind of reached out to me somewhat recently, and I think he's hopeful for like Broadway, probably for next year, 2021. But yeah, I mean everything. I mean I know he was playing kind of part time, like so he was subbing out about half his gigs for Wicked, but still playing and had been doing it since the beginning. But I know he's had to make some major life changes, like since COVID. So yeah, but I think he's hopeful. I think some stuff might come back. But yeah, it's kind of sad. I mean, that's something that we could talk about a little bit later as far as like COVID and how that's affected you and stuff. But no, there's interesting. I think it's cool. I sort of mention this in almost every interview that I do. Like, I think I know a fair amount about the people that I'm talking to, but there's always stuff that comes out. Like, I didn't realize you spent, kind of so much time in New York, and that was kind of the, maybe a catalyst for some other activities and some other stuff you had going on. Like, I mean, for instance, now a lot of the electronics and live processing that you incorporate into your composing and improvisation. I mean, did that stem from any time in there, or is that a whole separate sort of progression of interest?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was like checking out a lot of live music. I mean, both in the Philly area and in New York. But yeah, I mean, I think the electronics is something that's also always kind of been an interest of mine. And I've always enjoyed electronic music, and also, wanted to kind of incorporate it into percussion music. So, like, my snare drum solo Bounce, which I wrote in 2014, was like the first time I ever explored, electronics with percussion music. And, it has like a hip-hop-y vibe to it. And it was something that, I was interested in taking that. And I think that totally has, like, that interest has totally sparked my new EP too, which I know we'll talk about later. But that was just a medium I was interested in. The live processing stuff, it wasn't until more recent that I got my things together, so to speak, to be able to do that. And I took a while to just like learn it. And I mean, I've been reading, about a lot of electronic processing and, learning the different DAWs, and learning, about miking and throughout the last, 10 years. But, I didn't start really applying it to my own creative process until probably the last 2 years.
And was there kind of a inspiration for that? Other than this, maybe I know you mentioned Bounce, the snare drum solo, but was there kind of another catalyst or inspiration for exploring that more? It
was actually just time. And you would think that it would be during COVID, but so going back for a second to when I played with the new music group. So I was throughout that whole time after I got out of grad school, I was also teaching, and basically like I got hired to, basically build or rebuild this band program, because I have an undergrad degree in music ed and performance. Oh, okay. And so I got hired to just part-time build up this band program, right? So this was in
like at a high school level?
Middle school.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want high school because I'm like, well, I can never play if I have a high school band job.
Sure.
Right. And I didn't want to deal with the really little kids. So I got this it was just like an offer to do this. So I'm like, okay, that's great. I can still perform a lot. I can still write, and I can go in there and like build something. That would be really cool. Well, the next year, the general music teacher retires, and I already knew the kids. So they were like, oh, you should do this job. And I was like, all right. But it ended up being just too much for me, and I did it for 6 years. I really did love the kids and my job, but it was like throughout that whole time, I mean, I literally was still so active in the music industry, like performing and composing. I mean, I wrote some of my, like at least as of now, like some of my most played pieces, like Bounce was written while I was teaching. I wrote my drum set and percussion ensemble piece that placed in the PAS composition contest. I wrote 9 Lives, which was commissioned for the Atlanta snare drum competition by Tom Sherwood. Like I had a lot of things that I was still really interested in and I needed to create. I knew that I couldn't, be just a teacher my whole career. I need to do it to survive, basically. And so I kind of got to a point where I said, this is too much. Like I can't wake up at 7 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. to teach at 7, leave school at 3 p.m., go to New York, which is an hour and a half from my house, go play a gig, and then drive back home and go to bed and then go get up, after I went to sleep at 2 a.m. and, get up and teach the next morning. Like it just got too much. So I said, if I have an opportunity, I'm going to take it. So this is what takes me to the last thing. So in 2018, it was actually right around the time I was recording the pieces that you guys commissioned.
Yeah.
So beatbox.
The snare drum solos.
Yeah. And so those 3 pieces. So basically, I got an offer from Glass Farm to go to Europe for a few months, and so we, went. We went to Europe in the fall of 2018, and I took a leave from my job, and after that, it was another like one of those pivotal moments. Like my wife actually was able to come with me, which was awesome. We got to like see Europe, and.
Well, that was a question I had. I mean, I know you're married and with a little one.
No, but on the way. Oh, okay. Actually, on the way.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah, no. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But I knew you were married. So, and I was curious if you were married during that time, because that's just a whole nother level of stress and scheduling and stuff like that. So yeah, it's cool. She got to go to Europe with you.
Yeah. She came out for I guess 2 weeks. And yeah, because she also works at Rowan. So we met there, and we're both back there. At Rowan.
Oh, so you met in school?
We did, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, great.
So basically, like that happened, and then I was just like, well, I got a taste of like the tour life, and I got a taste of not having a regular 9 to 5 for a while, and I'm like, I need this. And so when I got home, it was maybe November-ish. It was like right before Thanksgiving, and that's how my electronics actually came to life, because I had time to explore it. And I was still teaching privately, so that was like, and performing, so that was like my baseline. That's like how I paid the bills. And then I was able to just like spend time every day, with my electronics, like trying to hone those and improvising. And my challenge, the whole 1 minute improv was like because inspired by that time that I had. So I said when I came home from the tour, I didn't have like a ton going on for a month, because like especially for me, so far I've learned that January is like horrible. I like never have any performing work in January, so it was super slow. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to spend the next 2 months, I thought, my challenge to myself is to improvise and post something every single day. So I'm going to, I've always kept a log of these improvs. I actually have them back from even when I was a grad student. I have like improvisation videos that I would keep. And so I said, I'm going to like challenge myself and actually put myself on the spot and post it. So my idea was I would improvise something, and then I'd have to, start and end that idea within a minute.
Are you familiar with Joe Moore's snare drum daily etudes?
Yep.
I mean, I think I talked to him for the podcast too, and it's eerie, like the similarities. Like he felt like he really needed to challenge himself, like in that with composition, and be like he needed to push himself. And it sounds like a really like a similar story.
Yeah.
Like you wanted to challenge yourself compositionally and improvisationally, I guess, and kind of hone some of those skills. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that was, I didn't realize that was his story about that too. That's cool.
Yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah,
pieces.
I mean, at least that. Yeah, I think that was it. He kind of talked to me about the kind of concept for his 1 year study for snare drum and kind of like these daily etudes. He really wanted to push himself to be creative and just get something out every day. So yeah, I don't know. I give a lot of credit to kind of people that commit, like yourself and Joe, like, okay, I'm going to do this and it's a goal and I'm going to do it no matter what. Maybe it comes out of it every day, like, but at least it's something. Like my wife is a graphic designer, and she works for a larger corporation, but she's like, sometimes I feel like there's still some creativity that she gets to be creative in her job, but there's other stuff that she maybe would want to do or explore. And she's like, maybe even if I pushed myself even once a week to like do something and do a blog or something and kind of a little bit write about it and then talk about the process. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like we don't have enough going on right now, but I feel the same way. It's like, yeah, it'd be great
cool.
to share some of those things. So
has she done it?
No. I mean, this was kind of a conversation because again, I was talking to her about my talk with Joe, and then she kind of brought it up separately, and I was like, well, yeah, this guy, percussionist and composer I know, kind of worked on this project a couple years ago, and I think it was really helpful for him. Yeah. So your electronics, and are we kind of getting gradually to your EP then, your release?
Yeah, I guess so.
Is that kind of what we're building towards here?
I think so.
Yeah. So can you talk to me about? First, I had to look up EP. I even had to Google EP, like obviously extended play, and like kind of what that means in the modern sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you even talk about that? Because I know, vinyl. They had EPs, which were like you could only fit a certain number of songs on a side, as opposed to like a long play, like an LP record, which is like obviously it's coming back. I mean, I go out and hunt for LPs now, like kind of longer format, longer play stuff. So what does an EP like kind of relatively mean now in the modern digital age?
Yeah, so it's actually, from a technical standpoint, it's anything that's less than 6 songs and has a time stamp of 30 minutes or less.
Sure.
So if you fit those, then you're an EP. And it's a lot of people have asked me so far, like, well, why did you choose to write music that would be on an EP and not just release singles? We're in the single mindset right now, and I think part of the reasoning behind my thought process was just coming from a composer's style. Like I'm always thinking like the big picture, right, and what this music will tell at the end. And so I wrote the first one, which is released now, the single, which is called Whimsical by Nature. And that single is available everywhere, shameless plug, on Bandcamp and Spotify and all that stuff.
Yes.
But
which we'll include all those in our show notes too. So yeah,
cool.
I mean, that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
All right.
Making sure people know about this.
So then I started writing that, I guess in March or April. And I started doing that, and then so I had an idea to just continue it, and I wanted to. It was another like personal goal to try and really push myself to keep it no more. Any of the tracks, I didn't want them longer than like around the 4-minute mark. So I wanted them to be a little bit easier to consume, not my normal style of like writing. Like 4 minutes is short. You know what I mean? For most of my pieces. So normally it's like, I don't know, for some reason I write a lot of like 8-minute pieces or something. It's just like a number that I hit, the 8-minute wonder. And so like it's kind of like, you know, I wanted to do something that was easier to consume, and had a vibe that was closer to my electronics things that I've been building, and also the electronic pieces with percussion that I've already written, like Bounce, and I have a marimba and electronics piece called Float, which was kind of like a sequel to that piece, and now Beatboxing Robot, which you guys commissioned, snare and electronics. And, you know, since then I've also collaborated with a bunch of ambient and synth artists. Like I collaborate with this contra alto clarinetist, which everybody should check out, Gildan, who is like an amazing, just like, you know, ambient artist. Okay. And this other ambient like and modular synth dude, he goes by Per Bar Fat. I wanted to just like use all of these, you know, interests of mine, like in the ambient, in the like kind of lo-fi hip hop music that I was starting to get into, and like some of my other interests. Like you can totally in one of the songs that isn't released yet even hear aspects of like the metalhead in me, and like I love Animals as Leaders and like instrumental, like heavy metal. And so you can totally hear some of like influences by bands like that with like, you know, the metric modulations and, you know, time signature, or even just like I use the guitarist from that band, Tosin Abasi. He's got a plugin that's for guitarists, and you basically can like use his actual gear. And you know, over the last, I guess, 4 months or 5 months, I've honed a way to use it on both marimba and vibraphone. Right. And so you hear it on the single that I released, but I even do like some like heavy like gent, you know, like gent electric guitar, like dun, 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 on the marimba, and you awesome. Can hear that, you know, in the third track.
Yeah, cool. How do you? So that's a plug-in. Okay, I'm going to be really elementary now.
Sure, go for it.
Like, so literally you're just miking the marimba and running it through this processor, or running it through, I'm sure you don't use GarageBand, but
no.
you're like, no, juvie. Yeah, no, you novice. Like,
or noob. Right? Isn't that what the
newbie.
Said? Yeah.
Right.
But I use Ableton Live for actually that was a new switch for me though. And again, you can definitely call like, you know, the quarantine and just in general having more time, since like I switched actually January 1st. It was like I bought Ableton on New Year's Day. Right. And because it was just something I wanted to explore. I was using Logic before that, and to do all of my other improv videos the past, you know, 2 years or so. And there's great effects plugins and great, like I would build, you can hand build delays and ring modulators and all these crazy things by hand in Logic, which is great. But it's not a great tool, at least I've found, to perform live with. And so Ableton, you know, is really flexible. And so I can, you know, it can record everything that I do in real time, including like moving knobs and sliders. And then I can also still create like, you know, all the delays that I made for the album are all, you know, like basically handmade. I, you know, can tweak them, and which is really awesome. There's like no limitations there. Yeah. And that's the hard thing about getting involved in all this, is like, it really is like, going back to what you had mentioned, I think, with Bill Kahn's theory of improvisation, right? Like sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and it's just so hard to get your bearings because there's so much. And so my advice that I would give anybody that would be interested in getting into electronics is like, just learn it first, you know? Like I was fortunate enough to be doing enough that I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do as an artist. And that's the first thing, is like, if you don't really even know what you want to your music to sound like, or if you're not sure what you want it to be, it's going to be really hard because you literally have endless possibilities.
Yeah. No, I could see that as being really overwhelming and sort of a stopper for people, like, because I think you would have to have a really clear idea of kind of that sound that you want. And that's what I find really intriguing, I think, about, people like yourself that are like kind of immersing themselves in this electronics field, and even like more like modern, like Arcade Fire, I'll use them as an example, or something like really I find to be creative, like musically, like, and I'm like, how did they even get there? Like, how do they even like begin to experiment with different sounds, instrumentations, or effects and stuff, and like find, like, they could spend days, months just with like one track. Totally. And kind of developing it and I guess perfecting it in their mind, and like it just seems really overwhelming to me. I'm like I have a hard enough time playing drum set in time and not rushing through a fill or whatever, like, let alone like try to like put this entire like kind of concept together. So
yeah.
I found it.
I would be lying if I said it was easy, or that I didn't like pull my hair
right.
out most times.
Right.
Right. Like it is really like you said it well when you just said like that I was immersing myself in it, because that's really the only explanation. It was just you can't really do it in any other way, and that's why the time between quarantine and just after leaving my full-time gig was like, right. Monumental in me being able to do it. Like this music, I was talking to my wife the other night, and she asked me like, do you think you would have written the music for the EP if COVID didn't happen? And I honestly think that I wouldn't have, because there's just always too much on everybody's plates, right? We're all so busy, and like I know you have children, right?
Yeah, two girls, yeah.
All right, so like when you have kids and you have gigs and you have a teaching job and you have a significant other,
right.
Things get in the way, and it's really difficult, and I just feel really fortunate.
Kids get in the way a lot.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you I'm telling you right now.
I'm gonna learn it soon.
Yes. No, they're awesome, but yeah. No, I sorry, you were going to say you're really fortunate. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's
thought there.
It's cool. I just mean like I feel really fortunate that like I have a good support system here. Yeah. And like my wife went to school as a musician. She is actually in communications now. And so like we met there, so she understands. I mean, we always joke and say that in undergrad she kept me alive because I would just stay in the practice room all day and night, and she would like, I'd hear like a knock on the door and like, hey, we have to go eat. I'm like, thank you.
You need sustenance right now. Yeah. You need to eat and probably sleep at some point.
Yes, so. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
So she's been really cool, throughout the process, and I have a great space down here to like, filled with gear, including my lovely BSP gear.
That's so sweet.
Yeah,
Thank
I mean,
you.
it's like stuff that inspires me when I come down, that like I need to play that, multi-sonic snare drum right now. Right. You know what I mean? Or I need to like start, creating right now.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I have a little home office and studio, and that was kind of it was before COVID. Like my wife is working from home now, and she was kind of prior to that, like 1 or 2 days a week working from home, because she's in design and is able to do that, I guess. And so we kind of created a space in our basement that was supposed to be a kid-free zone. So we try to stick to that as much as we can. But that's where our office is, and I was able to set up, my drum set and some, other instruments, and it was kind of been a goal of mine to like actually buy some drum mics and like, okay, use GarageBand like a noob. Maybe I'll advance to Logic, like that is a goal. Because that's what Jamel uses when we do all our recording and stuff in our facility. He's using Logic, and anyways. So that was like a big project of mine because we shut down. Black Swamp was like shut down for 6 weeks or more, 6 to 8 weeks, and then we kind of gradually started going in and doing a little bit of manufacturing, and I was doing stuff at home, like still doing social media and corresponding with dealers and doing some marketing stuff, keeping those type of things going. But yeah, we couldn't go into the office, so yeah, I was able to set up, my mics finally, and like figure out how to record and do stuff and begin to start to mix. So, and now, yeah, I think you're right. It's like now I am back to work, and our girls are still around. They're going to school in next week.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've already found like, okay, I don't necessarily have the time. I wish I could devote the time to it. So not that I want to be self-quarantined for another few months or anything, but it was definitely helpful to be able to like devote some time and attention to that. So then when I do decide, I have this thought or whatever, or this groove that I want to get out, that I've been walking around and singing to myself for the last 3 weeks, like I could actually press record and play it, and then probably never listen to it or hear it ever again.
Well, you said something that is really how I approach it, and I've approached it since I started my 1 minute improvs a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Is like I decided exactly that I needed to be able to come down to a space that was like, again, inviting. It made me want to create, but also it was easy to create, right? So like,
yeah, sure.
I have the same setup where I can come down at any given moment. I may have to move, the camera because our setups are big, and like it's not like we're just playing one instrument. And so, I can move the camera, but like my mics are all set up. I can hit record, like I'm ready to go in any given notice.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's important for me. Just I think, because sometimes, if I lose my train of thought, or if I just, I get distracted, because I can see my studio is on the bottom floor, but it's not a basement. So like I have a sliding door, and I have like windows. And so if I get distracted by the outside or something, and, whatever, it's hard to get back into it. And I noticed that like I needed to have my set time that works for me. And that I found actually starts at around 11 a.m. That's like when I do my best work, actually. And
that's what you've had enough coffee and you're ready to actually start the day.
Yeah. Right. I was gonna say that's why it was great that you said 11 a.m. Like,
11 o'clock.
Perfect. This is it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, 11 a.m. worked for me too. That's a side note. I definitely need coffee in the morning, and I need like a couple hours to like not be Crabosaurus, I guess. But kids would say.
What kind of coffee are you drinking? Anything good around you?
No, I mean, we honestly, I do prefer Starbucks, I guess, or whatever, but we don't, we just buy coffee.
You just need the fuel.
Exactly. I'm not a major connoisseur, so it's pretty much just like I need the caffeine. Yeah,
nice
to get me going. And if you ask the guys at work, like even like right now, I'm kind of home 2 to 3 days a week working, and then I go in and do shipping and other stuff that I need to do because we're still operating with a pretty limited crew.
Okay.
But even before that, like Jamel, he's our VP of operations. He'd be like, I know not to talk to you before like 10 a.m. It's like, he's like, it's just a conversation isn't worth it before that. Like, so, and he's a morning person, man. You go in and he's like ready to go at, before he gets in, early and is already kind of working and getting his day started before, everybody else is rolling in before 8 o'clock and ready to go. But,
I wish I could say the same. I'm like totally a musician at heart. Like that was another thing. Like my dad, going back to him being a baker, like we used to literally, like when I still lived at home for a year, when I got out of my master's, like we would literally pass each other in the morning. Like he goes in at 4 a.m. like to go bake, and I would be just coming home from a gig. We're passing like, all right, I'll see you tonight.
Right. We made a joke with our girls. One's just turned 13, She's our oldest, and then we have like a 8.5-year-old.
Okay.
And we just offhand made a joke, like, we had to get to work or whatever, and we were like, "Yeah, time to make the donuts here." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" Like, so we actually showed them the Dunkin' Donuts, the bakery commercial,
yeah.
the, old timey 1980s commercial.
Man.
Time to make the donuts,
yep.
man. He's up at the before the crack of dawn, getting his work done. So.
Oh yeah. And I was gonna say about that too is that my dad always, because he got up so early, right? He always just he would tell my brother and I, like, "Oh yeah, you'll get used to it. It's fine." And I think my brother, maybe he did, but I just never, like, it was always hard to wake up when I actually had to, and I will, yeah. But it's just like I really don't want to. Like I do my best work, like I said, mid morning.
Right. Well, I don't mean to put the pressure on, but once your kid is born, man, that's when I started drinking coffee.
Oh, really?
Actually, yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I did never really drink in college or after college. It's 13 years ago when our daughter was born, and I was like, this is what like 5 a.m. looks like, like, oh crap. So yeah, that's when you're gonna have a blast, man. Seriously, it's gonna. There's no going back.
Yeah, man, I'm really so stoked though, man. And actually, we're having a little girl too.
Oh yeah, congratulations!
Thank you. And I'm just like, I'm on cloud 9, man. It's like I thought what I thought was like the most important thing, is now bumped down a notch. So it's like it's just it's a cool time. So I gave you advice, well, or maybe the listeners, about electronics. So now you need to give me one tip for being a new dad.
Tip for being a new dad.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What's
here.
your best advice?
My best advice is if the kid doesn't want to have anything to do with you, like, don't take it personally, like, because they're more than likely they will want mom all the time, 24/7. Like, our girls were kind of both, like our. And at different times, it's kind of strange. They'll evolve, but obviously they're children. They will grow up and evolve and change. But yeah, like, our oldest specifically, from the time she was born, she was like a mama's girl.
Okay.
Like I couldn't do anything that would please her from the time she was an infant all the way until she was like 4 or 5. Like she didn't really want to have anything to do with me. But our youngest. I'm the one that could put her to sleep. I kind of had that magic touch. She didn't like me to feed her. She only liked, even with a bottle, like she just wanted mom. So, don't take offense if the kid doesn't seem to like you at first. Right.
All right.
No,
okay.
That'll be great. So that's the first thing that came to mind. It's not problem solving there, I guess. It's nothing groundbreaking, but
no,
that's all I got.
Helpful though, And from another, you got the girl squad at home too. So I get that.
And the biggest thing too is, like, if you do have another kid, like, I don't know why my wife and I thought that they would be exactly the same, like act the same, think the same, react the same, but they don't. It's like they couldn't be more different, like the two of them. Since the day, even before they were born, my wife was like, I can tell, like, this child is gonna be different and gonna be harder. And our youngest is definitely like more challenging for us, but we need it. It's like we can't. Why would we expect it to be any different? I don't know.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I get that.
Cool. Well, is there anything else about your EP or anything else kind of that you have going on you wanted to talk about, or information we should know?
Yeah. So, I just actually yesterday announced officially that the EP will be out on October 16th.
Right.
And it's going to be, 3 tracks. And actually, the way I've decided to kind of make the flow of the album is kind of goes similar to what I told you about my recital back in grad school, where I did like a seamless thing. And I like the idea of seamless. Even like my multi-movement pieces that I've written, like a lot of times they work seamlessly. And so that whole like again, big picture vibe is really something I'm interested in like to deliver my music. And so what I've decided to do is I made 2 tracks that are will kind of sequence the 3 together. So there's like a track almost like a 1-minute improv, and then a track, a 1-minute improv, and then the track. So it's kind of in that similar vibe. So it's technically it'll be 5 tracks, but it's actually three songs. And October 16th.
That's another reason for the EP kind of concept too, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know if I ever like finished that idea, but like, or that thought when we talked about it earlier, but yeah, I thought that I wanted to write a few tunes that went together, you know, like that people could sit down and like listen to all at once. I think it's only maybe 15 or so, no less, of music, and you know, it's just like a, you know, puts you in my zone for a couple minutes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, kind of before I have another question, I guess, sure. And it's just kind of something I thought of when you were talking about basically some of your collaborations, and especially, and it's kind of a little tied to the COVID situation. Obviously, the landscape has totally changed for rehearsing and performing and practicing everything. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been collaborating the last several months with people? I mean, you mentioned Gildan and Perbar Fat, and kind of those projects. Like, how are you guys sort of coordinating this, or how are you collaborating?
Yeah, well, I kind of initiated all of these at least, and my thought process was I don't want to make chamber music. I don't want to fake chamber music, I should say, like over Skype or, over a video or whatever, because,
sure.
like you can't like see each other. You can't take cues. It's not like you can't breathe the same way. So I wasn't really interested in doing something that required a lot of coordination. So what I offered was that I'll send something and then you just add to it.
Sure.
Or vice versa. And then actually in the latest one with Gloria, what we did was kind of cool. Where she sent me a 30-second clip, and then I sent her a 1-minute clip.
Okay.
So basically, I finished her idea and then sent it back to her, and she added to that. So it was kind of like a give and take back and forth. And
did they overlap then?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, in the end, they did overlap, but it was kind of cool to put it together because, it was like almost like a collage. It wasn't necessarily an idea that we started from beginning to end. It was more of like, well, that 30-second clip that she sent me first ended up being towards the end of the video.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you could kind of cut and paste, shuffle things around.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then, so that was one thing, and then the other, any of the other collabs that I've been involved in is basically like in a similar way, where somebody will send something and then I'll add to it. So I'm working with this really great double neck guitarist. He's amazing. Okay. Ethan Case. You can also find him on Instagram.
I've seen his name around. Has Jeff Willett been involved with him?
And actually this group is with Jeff. So
oh, okay. Very cool.
I'm good friends with both of those guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe I saw it through you, like maybe something you shared or posted it online one time. I just remember the guitarist's name, and was like, yeah, he was amazing. And then I also kind of wanted to ask you about Jeff, because I've seen you guys kind of collaborate on stuff, and he just seems like a cool guy and a great drummer. I kind of follow what he's doing online too. So how do you know Jeff then?
Actually through Steve Weiss.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was like I went there. I don't even remember when this was, a few years back, and we started talking because he was kind of in charge at the time with organizing all of their gongs, and I was picking out, I was picking out a gong for a concert I was playing, and that's the beautiful thing about living near Steve Weiss. I can just like go and pick out the instrument. But I went up there and we got to talking, and then he was telling me that he was working on an album, and then the next time. I gave him my email at that point, and then like a few days later, he emails me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to play on my album?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that would be awesome." So, and he, as you can see, he's like an amazing drum set, hand percussionist, and so he said, "I want you to play marimba on it." So he wrote these ridiculous marimba tracks, and we, he rented a marimba from Weiss, and like just in his in-laws' house have a pretty well set up recording studio, and Jeff is super talented as an engineer too. So he engineered it, and then we've been involved in a bunch of different projects together ever since. Yeah.
So Ian Ethan Case was after that then? Like that was kind of the start of your working together?
Yeah, so Jeff and I, after that recording session, Jeff introduced me to Ian because he was passing through Philly, and he needed an opening act. And so I said, hey, well, at the time I was just starting to work on my improv etude, so it was probably in 2016. And he said, I told Jeff, I have these improv etudes. We should just like basically make it into like a long piece, like make it into like a 30-minute set or something. And so we improvised around this etude as the opening act for Ian. And then Ian played, and then we all played something together, and it was like such a great experience. So then we all kept in touch, and Jeff and I keep working together. Then Jeff brought Ian in to work on this album that Jeff's album that I also played marimba on. And then right when quarantine hit, Jeff reached out again and said, hey, I've been really wanting to put together some tracks with you and Ian and myself. So we're working on a couple of tracks now that we've been working on since probably March, and I don't know when that'll be released because we all have albums coming out too. So it's been really cool. Like that just is as hard as it's been, and is what how much horrible things have been going on in the world, and all the political issues, and it's been really nice to continuously use music as an outlet, which I've done my whole life.
No, I think you're right. There's sometimes I think you got to search for the silver lining, and then in your case it's definitely family. Mine's too, and then like getting to spend time with my girls at working on. I had to explain what a shrinky dink was to Gloria when we talked, but like being able just doing like crafts. We were doing modeling clay and shrinky dinks, and I was proud of us. We didn't sit and watch Netflix all day. Of course we would, but just kind of spending time together. And, but then obviously your case, being able to collaborate more or work with people more and work on your own projects. And, I think you have to kind of find a silver lining, to help get through it. So you record. Sorry, I could just keep asking questions. I just more stuff keeps from. So when you're recording with Jeff, or your own stuff, you're doing all this at home and then just sending them. Are you kind of mixing your own track, or are you just sending them? I think you called it maybe a dry file. I had to Google that too. I'm like, oh man, I don't even know what a dry file is. When we were emailing back and forth about like doing this and some some other stuff. I'm like, a dry file. I got to know what I'm talking about.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
anytime I've done those, like, it basically, like, they always want, and this is the same with like, even some of, like, we didn't even talk about this, but, like, some sampling I've done for, like, a couple of, like, indie films. Like, they basically are, like, they want dry stems, right? So like these,
stems,
the files, like it's just like your part basically, and it's completely dry. So there's no compression on it. There's no, EQ. It's just basically a raw, lossless file, which is the best way to call it. And so you send that, and then Jeff is again a very talented mixing and recording engineer, and so he actually will just like put it into his Pro Tools file, and then mix it, and then send it to Ian, and then Ian will work on it when he has some time, and it's kind of like that. And all of his work is on a click track too, so it's a little bit easier to collaborate in this way. I mean, my music is on a click too for the EP, but like the stuff with Gloria, for instance, that and the ambient artists that I work with, Gildan, like nothing's on a click, so that's a little bit more tricky. But the stuff with Jeff and Ian is like very technical, and so it's all on a click, so it's not as hard to coordinate as it sounds.
Yeah, I was talking to Matthew Lau. Recently, and he was talking about he has the Fisher Lau project with Abby Fisher is her name, and they do kind of collaborate and do playing pieces. He's in Hong Kong, she's in the US, and they have been during quarantine like putting pieces together, and I think that was part of the challenge, is like they had to figure out how to kind of play to a click and do it right and work it all out.
I've seen a couple of his videos with her. They're really cool.
I mean, I don't know. I've talked to other people, like, I really appreciate, especially, Matthew's, like, how he's kind of packaged himself, like his entrepreneurial, like, skills and spirit. I mean, I think you've done a really, like, similar great job in, like, kind of building an identity in the music industry and, like, kind of percussion industry. Like, was that part of your thought process only, like I want to kind of like set myself apart a little bit, or was this literally just like where your interest sort of took you? I mean, it might be a mix of those, but I always, I mean, even when I was in like high school and I was in rock bands, I never wanted to play covers. Remember, like, everybody was, why don't you play covers? People are gonna like come see it. And I'm like, well, I don't care if people come see me. I'll play for 3 people in like a skate. When we were kids, like, I'm a little younger than you, but you probably was the same thing. We all played in like skating rinks. That was the cool thing. Like the local rock bands. We're like, I'm playing at the skating rink Friday night. Let's come. But at any rate, I never wanted to play music. Or I wasn't as interested in playing music that was like as widely spread. I think my EP actually is like very accessible, and that was also part of what I wanted to do with that. But I've always just wanted to just try and create my own path, and I didn't want to just deal with the same sounds that I grew up making. I wanted to like make my own sounds and play on tin cans and put effects on them and stuff. Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is you've figured out how to use social media too, which I think is I don't know if it's important or just smart or to kind of get your music out there, or kind of show people your identity and like what you're doing, what your voice is. And I think obviously in this age, like, it's a great tool, and I don't know, I always appreciate when people kind of figured out how to use it too, and are active and are kind of putting stuff out there and encouraging. And so I just kind of congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
That too, because
I mean, I try.
That alone, that alone takes a lot of work. It's like kind of one more layer, one more aspect. Like, you're not just composing and then recording and collaborating and writing, but now you have to kind of maintain an IG feed, or your grid, or your Facebook, page. So
it is. It is like an important thing now, and I mean, you guys, I think, do a great job at it too. I mean, just making sure that everything is at the forefront, and you feature people who aren't necessarily artists, you know, and
sure.
I think that we also have an awesome community, and, you know, people are interested in content. But I think that it's kind of, the way I think of it is like it's 50-50, right? The creative side, my creative side is 50% of the work that I put in, and the business side is 50%. So I always try and spend, you know, an even amount of time each week on, you know, updating my website, or like my sheet music shop, or, you know, working on my posts for the week, or doing invoicing, or, you know, because that's a whole nother thing. Like when, you know, I mostly, you know, am self-employed when it comes to, you know, my private teaching, because that's mostly my teaching is now there, and then I adjunct. But, you know, since that's what I do most of the time, you know, it's always, you know, many different you know, revenue streams, and, you know, and then on top of that, staying on top of, you know, royalties through ASCAP, or, you know, trying to get, you know, make sure that your music is getting on playlists, and, you know, there's all these different, so many different things that are involved now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's an aspect I didn't even have to think of. I mean, I work, you know, for a manufacturer, and we're a business, so we do that stuff all the time. But like as a musician, who you're promoting yourself, and like, you know, you have to have some business sense too, obviously, and you have to have kind of that drive to not let an invoice get lost, or, you know what I mean, or like not like follow up on, like you're saying, making sure your music is getting streamed or getting to platforms, like all that stuff that's gonna just, all these little pieces that kind of add up to the whole thing. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you ever talk to us when you're doing clinics or where you're doing master classes? Do you kind of talk about that more business or entrepreneurial side of your job?
I actually not so much, more in passing.
Okay, we'll move on then. Let's talk about. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of like the master classes that I've done is more you know, focused around improvisation, and just that, you know, alone, it can easily eat up time. But yeah, I mean, I think that I get those questions, and I think it's super important. And like at Rowan now, you know, the students have asked me that quite a bit, and I've met with like there were a couple that were really interested in composing, and so, you know, I'll talk to them about like even little things like building a website. Do you need one in this day and age, you know, or like just in general your digital footprint, or, you know, is it worth it to go with a publisher? Is it, you know, worth it to self-publish? Like, you know, all these questions, and I think that's another huge topic right now. Is, I mean, you know, I think that there's really, you know, it's so much easier to self-publish now, because you know, that's just a way that we can get music out there quickly and easily, you know.
And I don't know if it seems scary or a little daunting when you say it's like self-publish, because even at Black Swamp, years ago we kind of threw around like, hey, could there be a potential for a publishing kind of division? And it's like, well, I don't even really know anything about it, and I can't even, you know, I'm already working with artists and dealers and marketing and social media and stuff, so like I don't really have time to kind of think through this. So we just kind of leave it up to the people that know. But, you know, maybe it's not as like overwhelming or scary as it sounds. I mean, because I think you have stuff published through a company, but you self-publish also. You kind of do both.
Yes. Well, so I don't. Like all of my releases basically from 2013 and on is all self-published. But my first, I have 4 pieces published through KPP.
Okay.
You know, mostly marimba, and so those were there, and it kind of stemmed from you know, just getting offers when I, you know. Like, for instance, when my piece got placed in the PAS composition contest, it was like, now you have like all of a sudden these publishers like interested in you. And honestly, like just like if I was going to give any advice to young composers, and like I do it now, and I know a lot of people say this too, but like don't go with a publisher, because they just rob you. Like, you get most of your money is not, you know, yours. So it's, you know, you get a set percentage and they get a lot of the rest. And with the social media, now it's like you can promote yourself. Like I do more promotion for myself than my publisher will.
Right.
And so, that's just my thought on it. And I think that everybody now could do it pretty easily. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's an easy job. I mean, I spend a lot of time on it, and I spend money on, on a good website and, all that. Right. But, it's just not as difficult as it maybe used to be. I think the publishing division, like you were talking about, gets a little bit more complex because you have to deal with licensing too, and like I'm only, just doing like AD percussion stuff. But if you had like 500 different artists, on your team, like that would probably be a lot more in depth.
Yeah, sure. So you're just, you're, obviously, like you mentioned, handling a website, invoicing, taking orders through your website, but then you have to source like a printer, or like you actually have to have the sheet music printed unless you're doing all digital. I don't know, or maybe both. Like, how's that kind of work for you?
Yeah, I only did PDFs in the beginning, and over the past, I guess, 2 or 3 years, I did find a printer. And actually, thanks to Ivan Trevino, and he basically, hipped me to this great printing service in Long Island. But unfortunately, the owner, passed away like very like short, with like she wasn't sick, and it was like this whole, it was a really sad story right before quarantine, and so we were all kind of finding other places. So I decided to go local, and now there's a printing service about 10 minutes from where I live now that I use, and they've been able to fulfill the orders. And it's I don't do a ton of hard copy sales. It definitely is more PDFs. But it's still something that you have to think about, and I just like having control, over it. I like being able to, if I don't like how something looks, or if something, gets smudged or whatever, I can just, go get a new one and send it out, as opposed to with the publisher, you never know.
Sure. It's out of your hands.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm tapped, man. We answered everything on my agenda and more, which is like always super cool. So can you just, where can people find you? I guess you got a website, you got an IG handle.
Yeah.
Is that what the kids call it? Like, where can people find you?
Yeah. So
Anthony.
Instagram is AD Percussion, and my website is adbartolopercussion.com. And then everything is, just linked to those two places, and so you could find the single, which is called Whimsical by Nature, out on any of the streaming platforms, and then once the album, the EP drops, that'll be that also available.
Yeah, cool. Well, it was awesome talking to you, and like thanks for. We talked about collaboration, and I really appreciate kind of what you've done for us, and like being energetic and supportive, and like willing to work on stuff with us. I think that's like a big enjoyment, like a big piece of joy, like of my job, is to be able to work. I'm living vicariously through artists and musicians like you. But no, I think that's what makes this worth it. Like for a company, like we, of course we love, we're a manufacturer, and we take a lot of pride in our instruments and the quality and consistency of them, and kind of the innovation. But I think a big part of it for me is being able to work with artists and educators and provide additional content and educational content, and help kind of promote what you're doing and collaborate on projects. So I really appreciate you being kind of enthusiastic and participating with us. So
thanks. You. Yeah, I've always, as you know, respected your gear like from day one. Even from my first snare drum I bought as an undergrad student was my 6.5 by 14. It's like, and it's still serving me now. And so it was like a no-brainer, to keep collaborating with you, when I could. So I think that it's something that you guys do really well. and the fact that you pull everybody in and, you know, try and feature people and let everybody, you know, try and showcase the gear that you guys make is amazing. So I thank you as well.
Great. Cool. Well, thanks for the chat, man.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio and production assistance by Jamel Taylor and Nathan Coles. Intro and outro music by Adam Hopper. Music sprinkled throughout the episode was performed by Anthony Di Bartolo and friends.